Is George Russell talking himself out of a job at Mercedes?
If he's pushing and moaning and trying to become first driver and world champion, then I think they have a problem and George has to look for a job elsewhere.
George had a difficult weekend. Probably half of it is to be attributed to the power unit that wasn't as good as it should have been on his side, and the other side maybe on the driving.
At this rate, he's not winning the team for him. He's just hanging on like a cat on a mirror. I think George has found his own limits and he's not improving. It doesn't show the growth like Kimi does. And then it becomes a problem.
Kimi Antonelli right now is showing signs of being, dare I say it, the next Max Verstappen.
He's only 19 years of age and his mental strength is unbelievable. The track is too long and too fast for these new battery-charged cars, which is a shame. The Porsche car comes even almost faster out of Blanchimont than the F1 cars.
Dare I say it, that's F2, that's not Formula 1 as we once knew it. Fernando Alonso.
I saw his in-lap yesterday. The frustration, Chris, on his in-lap. He was closer to Formula 2 pole than he was to Formula 1 pole.
It's an absolute mess. By the time we get to Zandvoort, will we have a clearer understanding where Max Verstappen is going to be driving next year?
I understand from Austria there's also some pressure mounting on Max to make his decision and his management. And it's only fair as well. You cannot leave the team completely in the dark. I believe in Zandvoort, and we have some news there.
Welcome to another edition of the Pit Talk podcast powered by Ithara. It is the morning after the night before. Yes, we congratulate Spain, FIFA World Cup winners. We congratulate, though, Kimi Antonelli, 6th race victory of this 2026 F1 season. So many questions coming up from that Belgian Grand Prix. Is George Russell talking himself out of a job at Mercedes? We're going to get to that. And stay calm, Red Bull fans. We might have a bit of news for you that would suggest that maybe, just maybe, Max Verstappen is going to stick around for a season or two yet. All to be revealed on that front in a couple of minutes' time. But you'll notice my partner in crime is not at the Milli Miglia Cafe with me here in Dubai, because he's a jet setter is what he is. Robert Doornbos, on your world odyssey, where are you?
Hello, mate. Oh, well, I'm in, probably if you love football and you're in Spain, it's the best place to be. They're world champions. So there was a big party here in Ibiza last night. So yeah, I am here on the summer holidays with the kids. I managed to squeeze in a quick visit at the Belgian Grand Prix on Thursday. It was for a commercial event. So Spa is just a beautiful place, but it's a horrible place to get out of because it's in the middle of the Belgian Ardennes. So it's not very easy. Unless you're a Formula 1 driver, you have a helicopter, you're in and out very, very quickly. So yeah, I'll be spending some time here with the family in Spain and then also for Budapest next week. But for the Dutch Grand Prix, I'll be sitting next to you fresh from the Zandvoort race in the Milli Miglia Cafe.
Yeah, there's loads to get through, Robert. Tell me this, though. You were in Spa on Thursday, so the calm before the storm in many respects. Come on then, pal. Any gossip to tell us about, or are people avoiding you? Now that you've got this podcast, are people just seeing you and running in the opposite direction?
No, actually, I mean, it's a great tool to have because people are whispering stuff in your ear and they hope that you will launch it in the podcast and internationally. And we know how it goes. If we see something here, it will just be automatically translated into different websites and countries. But yeah, the rumor is that of the Mercedes is flying, that they have the reliability under control, which was a big test in Spa, because we've seen in the previous races that they were in leading contention of the race, or they were about to win the Grand Prix and then the engine would stop. So Toto Wolff had a big push internally on reliability, and it worked out well, as we could see with Kimi winning the race in Spa, coming from a deficit compared to Charles Leclerc. But he did a great job, and the car was reliable and fast, which is the perfect combination in Formula 1.
Yeah, nigh on perfect for Kimi this past weekend, Robert. What was he? Quickest in 2 of the 3 practices, on pole, and then apart from that little virtual safety car issue with Charles Leclerc, he would eventually pass the Ferrari man. He'd go on his 6th win in 10 races this year. And you know, it's not lost on me either, Robert. He's winning at all the big kind of sexy tracks, if I can call them as such. He won at Suzuka, he won at Monaco, he won at Silverstone, he's now won at Spa. He is ticking them off.
No, he didn't win in
fine style.
Silverstone. Silverstone was for Charles Leclerc, but he did win in Spa.
Oh, Charles Leclerc, of course.
And he was about to win in Silverstone. I agree with you. We already had it in the books. But then, it was the Monegasque driver. But what's very impressive also, Chris, and that's the rumor also in the paddock and what people see and they notice, and I think what George Russell definitely notices, is his mental strength. He's only 19 years of age, and his mental strength is unbelievable, because when he comes back from a disastrous weekend, what was none of his faults, when the engine failure we had, obviously Austria wasn't great, he finished P3, but he was okay with that result because he recovers fast and he always focuses on the good stuff, and he knows he has the perfect package with Bono, one of the best racing engineers in the paddock. The Mercedes package in general is great, but also his mindset walking through the paddock with his dad. Everybody's making jokes with him. He's really the next big thing in Formula One.
Unlike his teammate, all seems well in the world of Kimi Antonelli. Okay, yes, I know, you're right. Silverstone, great frustration there. He was destined to win that race. The reliability issues came back to strike, but I mean, yet again, another weekend, and I feel that we're doing this a lot on this podcast, George Russell, just out of luck. That first lap, he's already complaining. You and I were swapping WhatsApps not long after this race. I mean, the unedited version of the radio, he's effing and jeffing, talking about it simply being unacceptable. There's no power in that car. And then to compound his misery, the touch from Lewis Hamilton. He's out of the race. He's now 50 points behind Kimi Antonelli. And, it was interesting to me, Robert, he was emotional in his post-race interview. You could see the bloke was close to tears. He knows that his dream of becoming a world champion, certainly in 2026, I mean, it's up in smoke at this point.
Yeah, true. I mean, he's a long way back now, and we also seen in Formula One that you can make up a deficit of 100 points. We've seen it last year, all the way until Abu Dhabi. All roads lead to Abu Dhabi, so hopefully we have another special final there as well. But at the end of the day, it's all about completing every weekend and maximizing your result. What he did, George, was complaining all week about long speed on the long straights, which is a big thing in Spa, because basically you have three sectors. Sector 1 and Sector 3 are only determined by engine power, by pure grunt and aerodynamics. But the aerodynamics, let's assume it's identical to his teammate Kimi. So then if you're down on the straights, it becomes a mental thing and you start thinking about it, and I have to make up for it in the corners, which he didn't, because in the middle sector he wasn't better than Kimi either. So it feels like he's on the back foot, but let's not forget, a team, and especially a team boss, will never decide to favor one car more than the other in this part of a championship, because there's also Constructors' Championship to be won. So it's not like they give Kimi a better engine than George, but it can be that there is something crucially wrong in the setup of the car, and that it's just losing out on aerodynamics, or and they have to figure this out. It can be a million things, and that's the problem. We have 300 sensors on the car, and sometimes it's still difficult for a team to find this extra speed deficit. So only thing you can do is change an engine, which they're probably will do, because you can rotate it in your pool. You have 3 engines to rotate, and see if that's a difference in Budapest.
Tell me this, Robert, you having been in the driving seat yourself, I've been in and around teams and worked as part of a team. When he is remonstrating as much as he is, when you got George Russell on the radio going, come on guys, this is unacceptable, this is bleeping unacceptable, calling it out in a kind of public fashion as he is, what does that do for team morale? Those mechanics and engineers, they're big enough, they're ugly enough to take it on the chin. They know that, they're not giving George the best possible chance to win these races. But from a team dynamic perspective, it's going to be quite frosty in there over the course of this next week.
But to go back to yesterday at the start, we all talk about turn one in Formula One, which is always exciting after the start. But here, in particular in Spa, you don't talk about turn one, you talk about turn five. That's basically the first spot where you can see how good was your start, because the first hairpin at La Source is only like 150 meters after the start. That is full throttle downhill, where we saw Max Verstappen pulling an amazing overtake on Kimi Antonelli. So he went to hero status in front of his own home crowd tribune on the left-hand side at the entry of Eau Rouge. And then he got overtaken again on a long straight where there was a battery deployment party going on, let's call it this way. And George ran out of battery. That's why he got swamped by everybody. And he tried to, undo this error by outbraking Lewis on the outside into turn 5, which is like going on the penalty stip, in football. You take a risk and you have a chance to get hit, and he got hit. It was purely a racing incident, but the problem started earlier when he notices on the steering wheel, shit, I ran out of battery and I have no more power, so I have to outbrake everybody to make up for lost ground. That's the problem there.
That in itself, though, Robert, me and the production staff, this morning talking about that incident, and, the point was raised, Robert. It's the first lap. You've said it right there as well. It's purely a racing incident. George, despite his frustration, his disappointment, his anger, he himself saying, listen, there's no animosity towards Lewis, purely a racing incident. And yet the powers that be still give Lewis a 5-second penalty. Come on.
Yeah, that's not great. That's typical the stewards lately, and they're too much talk of the town. You want the Formula One Grand Prix to finish, and you don't want to talk badly about the stewards' decisions, and particularly not on an opening lap. And if somebody goes in there like a kamikaze, we've seen this in the past. Takuma Sato, Japanese drivers, they dive bomb and they take out 3 cars. Yes, of course, you get a penalty. But this is just pure racing. On the outside, we know this particular corner gives the opportunity, but you take a risk if you go on the outside, and you cannot take away Lewis's position. So yes, typical racing incident. The steward should be a little bit calm down a little bit on that phase and focus on penalties later in the race, because this 5-second stop and go penalty cost Lewis Hamilton his podium position. It was great for the Dutch fans that Max was on the podium, but the Ferraris both were quite competitive as well.
But just on that, Robert, as a former F1 driver yourself, the frustration everyone can see, us fans at home can see, and listen, that's the beauty of, I guess, armchair experts. We can all pass judgment quickly, but, we have not been in that driving scene. Even we can see, come off it, that's a racing incident. Do the stewards learn from that? Or is there kind of modus operandi to ensure consistency across that? Because if that happens in Hungary, if that happens upcoming at the Dutch Grand Prix, it's got to be common sense. It's a racing incident.
Yeah, and the best part would be, Chris, if you have the same group of guys doing it, and they're rotating too much, so you never get a feeling of the situation. And particularly ex-Formula One drivers, I'm not soliciting for a job. I'm very busy and happy with the podcast, but it would be great if there's more drivers there that know what cold tires feel like. At the end of a long straight, at the start of the Belgian Grand Prix, your tire temperatures drop. Of course you get understeer when you turn into turn 5. So it's a risk if you're on the outside, because the inside car will always get a little bit of understeer, and you get hit on the rear wheel and you get spin around, or you're stuck in the gravel like George. So it has to be from a driver's perspective, from a safety perspective. But then again, just be more flexible, guys,
Hey, listen, Robert, forget this podcast. I'll help you with a CV. Let's get it into the FIA, and I'll take a 15% cut off whatever you're earning.
Nice white shirt, FIA logo on it. Okay.
Watch this space. All jokes aside, though, I like that idea. Should we see more former F1 drivers actually getting involved at the kind of higher echelons of that?
Yeah, I think there are many ideas out there lately. Have you seen the idea of Carlos Sainz of changing the whole Formula One format? I'm not sure if F1 is happy with his comments of giving everybody a fair shot.
We're going to get to that.
And anyway, there's a lot going on in Formula One. To be honest, this was not the best weekend for the new regs and the regulations in Formula One with the engines, because we just, they try to take out the high speed kilometers. They the onboard stuff, but I listen to the onboard stuff. I listen to the engines. I have the feeling when you go into Poolhorn, which is the fast double left-hander, it's nuts that they have to downshift, right? Or into Blanchimont, when you can just hear the engine drop and they lose 60 kilometers an hour. The track is too long and too fast for these new battery charged cars, which is a shame, because in previous weekends we didn't really notice it anymore.
Well, that's it. I mean, not lost on me. I know a lot of F1 fans and sharing their various thoughts, and the memes come out after every Formula One race. But one of the most galling stats of all, and I'm sure you've seen it as well, the pole time last year was Lando Norris in the McLaren. 140.5 was his pole setting lap compared to 144.3, a drop off of 3.8 seconds. I mean, that is, dare I say it, that's F2. That's not Formula One as we once knew it.
No, that's very painful, and particularly on a historical circuit like Spa. I have such great memories to this place. If it was, I won in every category except Formula One. This place is just, you go all in at 7 kilometers, these fast flowing corners. You could really make a difference, you separate yourself from the men and the boys. And then if you have to take this away because you have to manage your battery, and the speed drop is so much. I mean, a Porsche car comes even almost faster out of Blanchimont than the F1 cars, it cannot be the case. GT3 cars or Formula 2 cars, that F1 should be up there on their own. I know the technology is there, the innovation is there, but then again, on these places, and I particularly hold my breath for Monza, which is going to be a tough one as well, with the super clipping. That's what we call it, when the engine's revs drop and the battery has to recharge. Yeah, the speed difference are huge, but it is what it is for this season.
I ask you this question, and again, it's a question that a lot of our kind of listeners on the pod or our viewers on our YouTube channel, I'd love to get their thoughts on this as well. But fundamentally, I guess, listen, it's not perfect. We know the product isn't perfect. I guess where we're at right now, Robert, is what do you want? Pick your poison. Do you want fast cars and it becoming a little bit more processional because these tracks are rather narrow and all the rest of it? Or do you want what we currently have, which, whether in Max's words, it's the push of a button, it's not coming down to driver skill, but we are still seeing overtakes. So what kind of side of the coin, or kind of which side of the argument do you fall on?
I wish it was that easy. I mean, from a fan perspective or analyst job, or just a big fan of the sport, of course, I love to see cars overtake, but I love to see them overtake by driver skill and not by electronics. And I think that is the trade-off that Formula One is looking for, trying to please the stakeholders, the car manufacturers that are spending hundreds of millions a year to be in F1, to use it as an innovation platform. But then again, also make sure that the drivers are the best in the world, that they can showcase their talent, why they're there, how they make a difference. And I've seen some great battles yesterday. I've seen the battles in the midfield were nuts, with Liam Lawson and Colapinto and Gasly. I think the wheel-to-wheel action, even Lindblad was in it. Fantastic results, because they probably had the deployment all on the same lap at the same place. So then it becomes a competitive playing field again. But yeah, qualifying, it just doesn't feel like it should be as a Formula One.
And listen, let's call a spade a spade. I mean, we're here to talk up F1. We love it. You, of course, it's been part of your world for a very long time, Robert. I've been a fan since I'm a little boy, but you read the comments from fans and, it's very difficult to pull the wool over their eyes. The talk of the fact that every time the battery conks out, the cameras cut away. They're trying to mask the deficiencies right now. And, the fact that Fernando Alonso said it, Carlos Sainz has been outspoken, Max has been outspoken. It's not through driver skill we're seeing these overtakes. It's from the push of a button. It's essentially, it's juking. It is ultimately artificially juking the system in order to get what we're seeing today.
And still, you have to be the best engine manufacturer out there. Like what Mercedes is doing is fantastic, right? They work their asses off to build this engine, to understand the rule books, because it's been clear for years what was about to happen. In 2023, Max Verstappen, in his most dominant season in Formula One ever, he already said it. I tested these cars on the simulator. It's not going to work in 26. It will be a disaster. 3 years prior to it actually happening. So there were some warning signs that this is not the best direction to go to. And on the other hand, these are the rules. You have to build the fastest car within the rule book. And Mercedes obviously did this very well. and they understand what their goal is and to become champion. For next year, the rules and regulations will make a bigger difference, because then they will go back to like a 60-40 engine split instead of what they have now. Which hopefully in the end it will just be more fun to watch it, particularly in qualifying. They should be able to go all in qualifying. That's one of the most important points, if you ask me.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with any of that. I did ask the question at the start of this podcast about George and whether he is talking himself out of a job. Now, I get it, right? Frustration is part and parcel of any elite sport. You know, you have missteps. There's been a number of missteps from Mercedes. The luck has gone undoubtedly against George. But I want to read you a comment from Toto Wolff, Robert, after the race yesterday. Of course, George unhappy. Again, we touched on it, incredibly emotional. But Toto said the following: George had a difficult weekend. Probably half of it is to be attributed to the power unit that wasn't as good as it should have been on his side, and the other side maybe on the driving. That's quite a statement. That is quite a statement for Toto Wolff to say, you know what, yes, we've got issues, but George needs to look at himself in the mirror as well. Your thoughts on that?
Well, it comes back every weekend, because we noticed something like this in Spa, in Silverstone as well. That he told George to stop moaning about the straight line speed deficit, because that's a thing they can easily moan at. But at the other side, there are 18 more corners you have to do well as well. You know, driving wise, setting up the car is something that obviously Kimi does better than George. Because he's able to go faster and to get more out of the whole package than George. So it's not just one thing. You know, George is blaming more the team, which while doing so, you put yourself outside of the team instead of backing it. That's the mental strength difference I was talking to you earlier about with Kimi. Kimi doesn't blame the team when his engine fails. He said, this happens, it's part of motor racing. There's a lot of positives to take with me from this weekend. Let's move on to the next weekend. And boom, he's there and he wins the Grand Prix. His last 4 races also were very up and down, like George's. George was the man in Austria, which is only a couple of weeks ago. He won the race and he was, floating like I'm back in the championship hunt. Yeah, and now this happens. So I think mindset really determines also if you're capable of winning a world championship or not. And at this rate, he's not winning the team for him. He's just hanging on like a cat on a mirror, trying to catch up with his teammate.
On that though, Robert, given the kind of the whinging, given the rather, kind of public kind of rebuttals, ultimately the rebukes, Toto Wolff is coming out. He's not hiding it. He's saying, listen, yeah, mistakes made on our side, but my driver has got to be better as well. George at times throwing his toys out the pram. Do you subscribe to a view that maybe there's a realization at Mercedes that maybe this guy isn't our guy?
Well,
long term?
Long term, they have their king inside the team. They have their future star. They have their, record-breaking driver, which they've created themselves. From go-karting, they nurtured him all the way to F1. Last year, there were some doubts maybe that is he the magic? Does he have the magic touch like a Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, Sebastian Vettel? Yes, well, we can all agree now the jump from year 1 to year 2 has been incredible for Kimi Antonelli. And that growth, if you don't see that with the other driver, you are either in a very comfortable position as a team boss, because then you have one superstar and a driver that's very happy to be second driver. But I don't think George will sign a contract where it states clearly you're the second driver. In any case, you have to jump when we ask you to jump. He's also thinking mentally, he's there that he can be world champion. Actually, he said it already a few times in the media. I should have had a few world championships already if I was at Mercedes. And it's not that easy to get a world championship, as you can see. So I believe that as a team, you don't want 2 Kimis, because that's going to be very difficult. But definitely Mercedes, I don't think is looking around for Max Verstappen at the moment to replace George, because they have Kimi in the house. So if George is happy to be second driver, then they will keep him. If he's pushing and moaning and trying to become first driver and world champion, then I think they have a problem and George has to look for a job elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, you study the body language of these guys. Ultimately, we talked about this off air and we actually spoke about it on a podcast a couple of weeks back. Is it slowly kind of dawning on George? Is the realization coming to him that, you know what, Kimi is the world champion in waiting, that perhaps my kind of position in this team has been usurped, that in actual fact I am playing second fiddle to Kimi?
Yeah, because he sees the data, Chris. It's like you can ask your team engineer, you can ask your team boss to look at the engine, but the data never lies. And they have so many sensors on these cars. So if you're in your debrief room and they overlay each other's data, he sees that Kimi Antonelli outbrakes him in every corner, accelerates a few meters earlier out of that corner, has better traction. It starts to get into your mind and like, how is he so much faster? Because in qualifying, the gap was more than half a second. Then Toto Wolff said, yeah, there was a minor problem with George's car on the straights, but that's not worth half a second, which means there's another couple of tenths in the driving part. And those couple of tenths, if I remind it to myself, jumping in the car, the same car as David Coulthard drove or the same car as Mark Webber drove, I was within a couple of hundreds. But then when Vettel drove the car, he was 2.5 tenths faster. And that 2.5 tenths I will never find. And I think as a driver, you understand what your limits are at a certain stage. And I think George has found his own limits and he's not improving. It doesn't show the growth like Kimi does. And then it becomes a problem.
Yeah, no doubt. And George Russell has got a lot of soul searching to do. As I say, I don't know, did you see the same, Robert, that he looked emotional? I mean, he really did in those post-race.
But it's also,
interviews.
I think, a journalist, you probably will be able to make somebody cry as well. It's the way you ask questions, you guys,
Don't have a pop at me, mate. Don't have a pop at me.
No,
don't
have
a pop at the journalist fraternity.
They need to, and I think it's for George. The best part now is that there's only 5 days before he's back in the car. Budapest, I'm not sure if that suits his driving style. It's a short track. It's more like a go-kart track. I predict the Kimi that is going to be extremely fast because you have to jump curbs, you have to be aggressive. What we've seen all year long is that Kimi Antonelli is using more track than anybody. Again, yesterday he was almost on the limit with the track limits that his engineer Bono said, Kimi, take it easy, 2 more laps to go. You already have 2 track limits. We don't want any more because then you get a penalty with Charles Leclerc breathing in his neck. So, the next weekend for George to bounce back is going to be difficult because this track is definitely a Kimi circuit.
Yeah, George Russell out in lap 1 in Belgium. Kimi Antonelli winning the 6th of 10 races this year. He now leads the driver standings by 50 points. In fact, 45 points from Lewis Hamilton, 50 to his teammate George Russell. Charles Leclerc finishing second. Lewis Hamilton recovering from that incident with George Russell, as well as the 5-second penalty to finish 4th. And then your compatriot, Max Verstappen, qualifying second, finishing 3rd, back on the podium. Robert, all in all, decent enough weekend for the Dutchman.
Decent enough weekend. A lot of pressure, a lot of talks before the weekend. Max is done with Red Bull and his exit clause is not activated, blah, 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 blah. There's a lot going on. For sure, this result would not change anything at the moment, but the result in general as a team, I thought they did a great job, particularly in qualifying with Isack Hadjar helping Max Verstappen to get this magic toe. They know they don't have the strongest power unit on the long straights, but then there was nothing to gain for Isack in that qualifying, and he was waiting for Max coming out of Stavolo towards the long straight towards Blanchimont, and just really giving him that 3/10 as a present. It was a difference of starting 2nd or 6th. So that was a fantastic team effort. I think Max's bonus from the podium he has to share with Isack, give him a little tickle, and then everybody's happy again.
Got to talk about Max because, I said at the start of this podcast in this edition that we might have some good news. Red Bull fans out there, stay calm. Maybe, just maybe, Robert, you're going to accuse me of putting 2 and 2 together and spitting out 45. But news this week, new race engineer in the shape of Tom Hart. He's been part of the Red Bull setup for a number of years. He was set to leave to join Williams. They've managed to extricate him out of that deal. He's now staying, and he's set to replace Gianpiero Lambiase as Max's race engineer. Does that, and I'm looking at you now, Robert, you've obviously got skin in the game, you've got your ears close to the Verstappen camp. Should we be getting carried away? Is that a big step in Max staying, or am I reading too much into it?
I think you're reading a little bit too much into it, because it's quite a natural thing that they have to look for a follow-up for Lambiase, who's obviously leaving to McLaren and already now doesn't get all the information from the factory anymore that he would have wanted, so they don't want to give anything away to McLaren. I see him next year just coming less and less to the races, so you have to automatically get a new race engineer in. It has been done before when Lambiase was for private reasons not at the racetrack. Max was using another race engineer and he got on with really well. So there's still a lot of movement on staff at Red Bull. There's also still staff leaving, which is also a worrying factor, which is obviously not being put in the media that big, but it is happening. So there's millions of points that the engineers or the management of Max is looking at. Do we need to stay or do we need to leave? But to be honest, we discussed this as well. There are not that many options. The biggest option was obviously leaving to Mercedes. Well, he missed that boat. That's not going to happen anymore. And then the McLaren guys are announced or have announced. Even Oscar Piastri announced it, and Mark Webber as well. We tried to get him on the pod, but he wasn't feeling it at the moment, because I think there's too much pressure surrounding the future of Oscar Piastri. But they announced that they're happy to stay as well. So I don't think there are many more options for Max just to sit out his contract till 2028 at Red Bull.
You don't think the problems that are the fraying at the seams between George and Mercedes might get a little bit wider as the season progresses? Ultimately, I know he's got his contract there, but that's surely one for us to keep a close eye on. But as we've said on this podcast, I guess Toto wants there to be room to breathe for Kimi Antonelli, because Kimi Antonelli right now is showing signs of being, dare I say it, the next Max Verstappen.
Yeah, and Toto knows what it's like to have two superstars in one team. It brings a lot of tension, with Lewis and Nico. They didn't get on very well. They were fighting each other for the championship, wheel-to-wheel action with the cars. Great for the fans, but not great for the heart rate of a team boss. So, you have to really think about that well if you want to have Max and Kimi in the same team.
Kimi with an incredible drive, an incredible performance all week. We've touched on that, but surely performance of the Sunday. I want to stick with Red Bull. Dare I say it, Rob, Isack Hadjar showing us all what he did in F2. Aggressive, ballsy, P21 to P6, his best drive in a Red Bull car.
I like the Frenchman. I like his attitude. I think everybody in Red Bull, or what I hear, they all like him. He's the best second driver from recent years, because he's really gelling in well with the team. He's delivering. There were some minor glitches, like in Miami, the crash, etc. But considering his experience, and he got up motivated very well last year already when he was at the Racing Bulls and he got a few podiums. He knew quite early that he would get the shot at Red Bull. And he just, got in there and did the job. He outqualified Max a few times, scored points regularly yesterday, made 15 positions from P21 to P6. So this is exactly what Red Bull wants, and he's a team player, as we saw in qualifying. So Isack is in a good spot, definitely.
No doubt, it was a great drive from Isack. Same cannot be said. We always go there every single episode. We have our Aston Martin watch. Fernando Alonso. That bloke just wants this season. He wants the tracks to open up and swallow him whole. He wants this season done and dusted. Again, so far off it, 2 laps behind the rest. Just another pile of steaming hot you-know-what.
Yeah. It's terrible. I saw his in-lap yesterday. The frustration, Chris, on his in-lap when he just, he passed the checkered flag, like you said, 2 laps down. He just made a lot of burnouts with this car. He was going sideways like he wanted to destroy the car because there's a big upgrade package coming to next race. So this car, he's not driving anymore. There's hopefully for him, a much faster car coming out of the factory. But still, the gap is huge. He was closer to Formula 2 pole than he was to Formula 1 pole. And that's not how it should be, of course. It's a complete different category.
It's a mess. It's an absolute
Well, at
mess.
least he was home on time
This
for
one.
to watch the Spanish football, because that was his goal for the Sunday. I think a journalist asked him, "What's your goal for today?" He said, "Well, to get home in time to watch the match." Can you imagine? You're a Formula One driver, you get paid 10 million a year, and it's such a mess that you're in. Yeah.
Hey, well, listen, that's the only thing he would have been smiling about, Fernando, across the weekend, because his beloved Spain, of course, did win the FIFA World Cup. So hopefully Fernando enjoyed that as much as he can off the back of the weekend that he endured yet again. More problems. And I'm at this stage, Robert. I know we've written them off. You said it weeks ago. There's nothing they can do about this season. But even looking in, how on earth do they make the strides required to even be close to being competitive next year?
Yeah, well, it's basically because in April they started working on, stopped working on this car. So the focus is definitely at Honda in Japan to improve this power unit, which is one of the biggest factors of a Formula One car. If you don't have the power, you're not going anywhere. And then aerodynamically, we haven't seen anything from Adrian Newey, nothing. Because the car is so bad to drive. The handling is so poor because of the weight difference with the engine being bolted onto the chassis. There's no synergy in the car. It's all over the place. So you cannot start working on fine-tuning anything on aerodynamics or mechanical grip. So
yeah, I really should apologise to anyone associated with Aston Martin, because each passing week I seem to say that it is a hot steaming pile of you-know-what, but even the most ardent of fans will know that's exactly what it is. Listen, Rob, the other big elephant in the room I do want to touch on, a lot of speculation about this F1 2026 race calendar. Of course, a lot of that to do with the ongoing political situation here in the Middle East. Do want to just reiterate that it's very much kind of our opinion and what we're being told, the noise is coming out of various factions, that it is business as usual for the final two races of the season, both in Qatar and Abu Dhabi. So it's important that we point that out. I know there's been a lot of speculation, but as things stand, business as usual. This season will still end in the UAE capital. Fingers crossed on all of that, because we know that Abu Dhabi, as it did last year again, it does deliver more often
incredible.
than not.
Abu Dhabi last year, they won the Promoter of the Year award. I went to visit Itara, our proud partner of this podcast, and I saw the trophy from up close. They're very proud, of course, but they also raised the bar. So to set this up again for this year would be amazing. But if you look at the list of artists that are going to perform, and the track in general is a great final for the Formula One season. It has been for over 15 years. So yeah, hopefully we're there and we can have our podcast on site for the first time, Chris. That will be something.
Yeah, big plans afoot on that front. And anyone that perhaps isn't here in the United Arab Emirates watching this or listening to this from afar, all the paraphernalia is dotted around the city. Excitement for Zara Larsson, excitement for Lewis Capaldi, excitement too for Imagine Dragons, and of course, more than the musical acts, excitement for the F1 Roadshow to be back here. And the podcast as well. Little bit of excitement for that. Listen, whilst I've got you, you and I have spoken a lot about what needs to happen in F1. There's a general consensus the regulations need to be tweaked. Let's get back to the grunt, the speed of F1. But I'm always interested to hear the thoughts of drivers and fans when it comes to big picture ideas, Robert. And this past week, we saw Carlos Sainz Jr. and his big idea for Formula One. It's controversial. It's not to everyone's liking. I want to get your thoughts on it. Essentially, Carlos has put forth this notion that all drivers become essentially employees of F1, and every single driver gets to have at least 2 races for every single team. Got to get your thoughts on that as an idea.
I think Carlos has been in the Williams a little bit too long and getting frustrated because, yes, he sees his Ferrari car winning again and being up front. It was the Ferrari car he had to leave, of course, when Lewis Hamilton arrived. But the idea it sounds like a lot of fun. And honestly, we all would like to see one day what can Max do in the same car as Kimi, or what can Kimi do in the Red Bull, or anything. But it will never happen, Carlos, because it's impossible. Formula One is celebrating their 75th anniversary, 75 years already. It exists of teams employing drivers, being ambassador for the brands. and performing at a certain level. Formula One is just the organizer, and it hasn't been done in any racing series that there's one employer for all drivers and they move them around. It sounds like fun, but I think just commercially and legally it's impossible to do that. The charm of F1 is that the teams choose their drivers, have their own budgets and build their own cars and attack other teams, and try to win it. So even though I would love to see, and I've been in a situation that I was driving a McHardy, a shitbox on the back end of the grid, and I was just trying to, steal somebody's keys from his car, try to move up. It would only benefit me. It would not benefit them to drive my car, even though, the difference were huge between the cars.
I don't think I've ever asked, Robert. I mean, you live it. This is your life. What's your big idea? You must have a big... I told you my idea on last season's podcast, and the more I've thought this through, I still think my idea's the winner, chicken dinner, but you must have an idea to improve this.
I would just... One of the best parts of racing is a racing weekend is qualifying, if you ask me, because qualifying gets you out of the car and you extracted the maximum out of your package. I would love to see no rules on the Saturday. So as many tires as you can, bolt them under the car. The biggest engine you can find, even only it will last 4 laps. Go all in, see what you can do, and let the driver do the talking on track. Less electronics, less scheduling of we can only use so many tires because otherwise we don't have enough for tomorrow. Just make it a separate session, all in. As many tires as you want, you get 15 minutes and show what you can do. I think it would be fantastic. Impossible, probably, just like Carlos's idea, but fantastic.
Right, you say it's impossible. I want to just jog your memory because there might be people watching or listening to this that did not listen to my big, bright idea on last season's podcast. I just want to reiterate this point. I want to try and be as clear as I possibly can with it because I'm still convinced that Liberty Media and that this could work for Formula One. So you ready, Robert?
I'm ready.
So, 24 races on the calendar, 22 cars on the grid. If we say races 1 to 11, and then 12, and then races 13 through to 23, and then the race 24. For the first 11 races, qualifying is normal, and then we create a situation great for the viral, kind of the social media world. Let's say opening race in Melbourne, Max Verstappen finishes the quickest, he's on pole. He then steps in and he is asked, right, Max, it's race 1 of the season. There are 22 spots on the grid. You've qualified first, in which case you get first choice. Where do you want to start the race tomorrow? He decides 5th. Okay, that's your 5th. Come on in, Lewis. You qualified 2nd fastest. Where do you want to start tomorrow's race? I'm going to start 22nd. And you get what I'm going at. You have 22 races in which every single driver starts in each of the positions. Race number, of course, 12 of the season and race 24 of the season, you have it free qualifying so that you're not playing around with it too much. But I just think there, Robert, we then get a little bit of a differential. We get an Aston Martin starting a race on pole. We get a Max Verstappen starting in 22nd. And it creates a far greater product because all of a sudden now we're seeing whether Max can extract the maximum out of that Red Bull to get in the points. And I think by doing that is actually a pretty creative way of finding out just who is the best driver when you're starting in every single position once across the season.
And if your package is good, like Max's car in 2023, I think he started 14th in Spa and he still won it. So, but great overtaking, great action on track. I do believe, Chris, you have something there. It's less impossible than our ideas, than Carlos and my idea. I think it's less impossible.
I want ideas. Any listeners, any viewers of this, pop your ideas down. If you're watching on YouTube, give us your ideas in the comments section. Ways in which, listen, we don't want it becoming silly. We don't want it becoming gimmicky. I still think my qualifying idea, and I let you into a little secret, Robert, I did an event the back end of last year, and there were a couple of Formula One Supremos in the room, and I actually pulled them to one side, and I gave them this long kind of sales pitch. I must admit, they kind of blinked a few times, they were very polite, they nodded, they thanked me for my idea, and then they left this suite
I know this
down the Yas
feeling.
Marina circuit. I'm not quite sure they were taking it too seriously, but it's an idea.
You know what we're going to do,
nonetheless.
Chris? Never give up on your ideas. We're going to travel down to Baku and we're going to pitch it again. Let's do that.
I'll let you do the pitching. You're the salesman. You're the entrepreneur of the pair of us, Robert. Listen, all jokes aside, that's maybe a conversation for a different day. I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts. But we've got a quick turnaround. We head to Hungary now, and then the summer break kicks in.
Summer break kicks in. I mean, Spa is behind us now. Spa is always a highlight of the year. I enjoy it so much. So many memories come back up if you see this place, just thinking about driving it. Fantastic circuit. But then again, Hungary is also been on the calendar for many years. It's scorching hot in the summer. There's a big water park next door. When you're driving, or at least when I was driving the McHardy, I was all over the place, sometimes looking at the water park, thinking I would love to jump in there now because I'm sweating my ass off in this car. It's very tough. We didn't have power steering back then, Chris. It was a toss of a coin, $50,000 power steering issue. Who gets it this weekend? Nuts. You can't imagine it these days anymore. But maybe Alonso will feel the same next week when he's driving that car around Hungary. I hope for him and for Stroll that the car is faster. But then there's a big summer break and onwards and upwards to the second part of the season, kicking it off in Zandvoort. Big one.
Yeah, what are you hearing? Whilst I've got you, of course, you're a man that bleeds orange. Is Zandvoort going to be one heck of a final party before it says
Crazy. They call it the final lap. Everything is sold out. It's going to be nuts with DJ. It's more like a festival than it's going to be a Grand Prix weekend. I think the sound of engines is just a minor detail of the weekend. The rest you will just hear our famous Dutch DJs showing their skills, and hopefully, I mean, Max has done incredible in the past years. They're always on the podium or even winning it. So for him to be on the podium now with this car in this position will be something special. But it's very much a driver circuit, so you can make a difference as a driver. It's a high risk, high reward track. So I think it's possible.
Right, popping you on the spot. Of course, the Dutch Grand Prix comes after the summer break. By the time we get to Zandvoort, will we have a clearer understanding where Max Verstappen is going to be driving next year?
Yes, I believe that is the case because the teams have to prepare for 27 as well. They need to know what the driver's doing, and I understand from Austria there's also some pressure mounting on Max to make his decision and his management, and it's only fair as well. You cannot leave the team completely in the dark until the last part of the season. So I believe in Zandvoort we have definitely news about the Grand Prix in the remaining Grand Prix of this season, because there was an issue with Bahrain coming back on the 14th of October. I think that has been cancelled now, but perhaps there's one more Grand Prix coming back on the calendar, but for sure we have a busy schedule and we have some news there.
Okay, watch the space on that front. Final thing for me to do is to remind you, abudabigp.com. As I say, this race is still going ahead come the first week of December. That is the information that we have been given. Nothing has changed on that front. abudabigp.com. Get your tickets. Avail yourself of all the different musical acts and all the bits and pieces. Of course, there is a real festival down in Abu Dhabi across that final week of the F1 2026 season. Rob, you're in Ibiza, you lucky bugger, which means, are you joining? Is there a big Monday party to celebrate Spain's FIFA World Cup win today?
I will ask tonight in Pasha Discotheque somebody if they have some good ideas about Formula One and what they have to do with it. I'm sure they come up with some crazy ideas. But no, I'll be here. We're spending some time with the family and enjoying Spain.
Yeah, with the red and yellow face paints on as well, celebrating. A Dutchman with a Spanish. What could possibly go wrong? You enjoy it, my friend. Enjoy Hungary. I'll catch up with you post the 11th race of this 2026 F1 calendar. Stay safe, pal. We'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
What a life. Forget being an F1 driver. You just want to be a former F1 driver. Robert Doornbos, he must be platinum on Emirates. And if he's not, he needs to have words with the owners of that place. Right, we're back to do it all again after the Hungarian Grand Prix. Ta-ra for now.